Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to Iron Anchor Cycles. So I know our videos have been a little bit sporadic and a little bit few and far between over the last couple of months, but we've got a project coming up that's on the lift behind me that is just gonna be too good not to film. So I decided, just gotta suck it up, get the camera back out and make a video for you guys, which I think everyone should really be into. So what are we working on? Well, you probably know a little bit already from seeing the thumbnail of the video, but we've got a Concord Purple 2002 lowrider here on the lift. Now, if you're a Dyna person, which I certainly consider myself a Dyna guy, everyone's got their opinions as to what are the holy grail bikes, what are the best ones to own. I could do a whole video just on that, quite honestly, but depending on what your preferences are, if you like late model bikes, early model bikes, fuel injected, carbureted, a 2002, particularly in Concord Purple, just because it's a popular, not super rare, but a little bit rare color, a 2002 lowrider has got to be on anybody's list. 2002 being the last year of the Timken bearing bottom end. It's a great color, particularly if you're a person who owns multiple bikes. Having one that's a narrow glide early model Dyna is definitely one you want on the list. So this is definitely a cool bike. And fortunately, the owner of this bike wants to do some really cool stuff to it. So enter us doing a YouTube video. So let's talk a little bit about what we see here, and then I'll talk a little bit about what we're gonna do. So when I say what we see here, let's talk about the fact that this bike is a little bit incomplete at the moment. This did come to us mostly assembled, and we did a little bit of prep work in anticipation of being able to start working on it so we'd have some parts ready to go. So one thing is obviously very clearly the exhaust has been removed so that it could be cleaned up. I'm not sure if that's going back on or if we're gonna put a replacement one on, so that's TBD, but that's why it's been removed. The wheels that are on here are not the wheels this bike rolled in with. I don't know if you can see. Obviously, you can see it's missing the brake rotor over here. No sprocket either. We've got no sprockets in the front. These are just wheels that we have sitting on the shelf that we use to put on bikes so we can roll them around the shop when the wheels that belong on the bike are not present. So the wheels that came on this bike, all I'm gonna tell you is that they're 13-spoke mags, but they're out getting done. And I'm not gonna tell you what getting done means. Maybe by the end of this video or the end of the description I give you, you'll be able to figure out what the getting done is gonna be. And if you think you got an idea, leave a comment below if you think you know when we say getting done, what that means. Just keep that in the back of your head when we talk about the rest of the stuff we're doing on this bike. So wheels, and then the seat. Actually, this came to us with no seat on it. Definitely gonna be putting something on here that's gonna match the bike pretty well. So we'll get to that when the time comes. But other than that, the bike is complete and assembled and pretty much in the condition that it showed up here in. And it's in really nice shape. Is it perfect? I'm gonna say definitely no. You know, it's a 23, almost 24-year-old bike at this point. It's got signs of a little bit of wear, but it's definitely in good enough shape to be able to do a little restoration and do some upgrades on it. So a lot of the bikes that come through our shop, the aesthetic is very similar. We do a lot of blacking out, a lot of black anodized parts, you know, billet stuff, a lot of powder coating in black. But this bike, I personally think, and the owner agrees, this bike just screams, build me something that's got more of like a 90s vibe to it and lean into the chrome. So that's what we're gonna do. We are going to do a whole bunch of functional upgrades on this bike, but we're gonna maintain the aesthetic that I think is gonna match the Concord Purple really well. So this bike is gonna be built to be a stunt bike. Now, I'll give you a little bit of perspective. If you remember a video we did not that long ago, and I will leave a link up here to that video, we did a 2005 Superglide Sport, which got all the bells and whistles done, and we built a stunt bike. I'm actually looking at that bike right now. It's back here. That bike that we built, this bike is owned by the same person. So same owner, going in two completely different directions in terms of the aesthetic of the bike, but the functionality is gonna be the same thing. So this bike is gonna get the balls beat off of it. And if the last bike we did for this customer is any indication, this is gonna be on the rev limiter the day it's picked up. So we're gonna build a solid, but really nice looking at the same time stunt bike. This is not gonna be a hack it together, throw a chain on and jack the rear up stunt bike. This is gonna be a bike for somebody who knows what they're doing, because it's not a bike you're gonna wanna lay down. So let's put it that way. It's gonna be kind of the best of both worlds. So I guess I don't wanna talk too much about the specifics. We'll kind of get into that as we get to it, but needless to say, we're gonna be doing work with bars and risers. We're gonna be doing work with suspension. We're gonna be doing some motor work, namely to get a little bit more power out of it. But one of the big changes and upgrades you wanna see is checking the cam chain tensioners, and we're just gonna dispense with the mechanical tensioners entirely and do a Feuling hydraulic tensioner conversion kit in here. We've got a lot of stuff to do. So we've got that. Obviously got, foot controls and things to deal with, the pipe, I mentioned suspension. We're gonna do a chain kit. We're gonna do a lot of eliminating of stuff that's not necessary. So this bike's gonna get the fender chopped, which I know is kind of sacrilege on a beautiful original paint like this, but gotta do what you gotta do. For function is more important than form, I guess. What did Willie G. Davidson say? I think it was form follows function and both report to design. I don't know. Maybe leave me a comment if you know what that quote is supposed to be. I know I got the first part right. I can't remember the second part. But anyway, I think that's enough talking. I think what I want to do is just get into this, because I think the reason you guys come to these videos is to see what we do on these bikes and less to just hear me ramble on about the history of Dynas and the differences in models and all that nonsense. So we're just going to get going with this. So we'll do a little time lapse for doing some disassembly, and we'll come back in and talk about what the first upgrade is going to be. I think we're going to start with the motor. So if that is your cup of tea, stick around and we're going to get into that right now. And obviously we will stop and talk about any problems or things like that we find. So any issues that arise, we're going to fix. So we'll get into all that stuff too. So if you're ready to see this pretty original, slightly modified, a little bit rough Concord Purple O2 lowrider turn into a perfect, beautiful, functional stunt bike, you're in the right place, and we're gonna get going on it right now. All right, well, you just saw us get the initial disassembly done. Now it's time to start tearing into this motor. We've got everything we need to get out of the way. We've got the oil out of the bike, and we've got access to the motor to start getting this disassembled. So the next thing we're gonna do is basically start working our way from the top down, get the rockers disassembled, get the push rods and lifters out, get the cam cover open, and get access to all the parts we need, and also be able to get an idea of what's going on inside this bike and make sure everything is good, other than, of course, what we're changing. That doesn't really matter anyway. But we obviously like to get an idea of the health of the motor before we do work on it, so that if there's anything in there that we need to fix other than what we were planning on replacing, we can do that. And also just to make sure that the motor is solid and it's a good basis or a foundation for what we're gonna do. So that's where we're gonna head now. But before we do that, there is one little thing that I'm gonna tackle, which is, I'm sure you all know what I'm gonna say if you are familiar with these videos of me working on Dynas, and that is, we're gonna get rid of this stock exhaust bracket. This is one of my little pet peeves, that people leave this behind. Almost every bike we work on still has this on here. It makes a mess when you drain the oil out of the cam cover. It looks bad, and honestly, it's just one of those little things that with a little bit of effort, you can get this off. But it is kind of a pain in the ass, and that's why people leave it behind. It's not in the way for putting on almost any aftermarket pipe that I know of. So most people just leave it there and then move on to putting on their aftermarket pipe because, well, you don't actually have to take this off. But we always do, and that's what I'm gonna do right now. So I'm not gonna show you taking that off, just because I don't think we need to clutter up this video at that. I'll try and find a video where I do it. I'll leave a link up here if I can find it. But I am gonna record doing this, and we're gonna do an Instagram reel on it. So if you're interested in seeing that, you can go over to Iron Anchor Cycles on Instagram, and you can see me taking this exact one off. But for now, we're just gonna jump in to getting this motor disassembled. So here we go. All right, so if my microphone had been on instead of being turned off accidentally, what I would have told you right there was that once we had the upper rocker covers off, our normal next step would be to start removing the rocker assemblies. But because this bike doesn't have the correct wheel on it in the rear, it doesn't have a sprocket on it, which means we can't turn the motor over by turning the rear wheel. So rather than going to try and find a different wheel that's still got a sprocket on it and get it put on here, the easiest thing to do is just to come to the cam chest, remove the cover, and we'll be able to turn the motor over with the pinion sprocket, this bolt on the pinion sprocket that is, rather than using the rear wheel. Now the only other thing I want to do here, this is not something you should do as a matter of practice, I just want to point that out. Using this bolt to turn over the motor when the rockers are fully assembled and you have the weight and pressure of all the valve springs. This isn't designed for that. So it's not something you want to do unless you have to, but we're going to make it one step a little bit better, which is to unload this mechanical tensioner and get as much drag off of here as we can. So I'm just going to take our tool, slide it on here. I think that's the right way. And what I want to do here is get this lined up so I can put the pin through, which will hold it. And now we've got no tension on this chain. This will turn over a little easier. We can also get our first look at the shoes here. It's got some wear on it. It wasn't ready to come apart by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely worth replacing, and certainly we are because we're doing a full hydraulic tensioner conversion. So with that done, I'm just grab a socket. We'll get the motor turned over using this bolt here, and then we'll proceed to getting the rocker assemblies removed. All right, so with the front squared away, move on and do the same thing on the back. All right, time for front and rear lower rocker box housings. All right, with rockers done, let's go ahead and get these lifter covers removed and get the lifters pulled out. All right, so it's our top end as disassembled as it's gonna get for today. Next up is gonna be the cam chest, but I think I'm done for the day, so I'm gonna get cleaned up and we'll start on this when I'm back. It's actually the day before Christmas Eve, so we're back after Christmas, keep rolling on this, but for you guys, it's gonna be right now. All right, well, we're back from Christmas. Time to keep going with this disassembly. Let's get this cam chest disassembled. All right, so there is our cam plate assembly removed. We could have separated the oil pump from the cam plate here. If we were doing a reassembly using these parts, we'd want those separate so we could put them in separately. But since we're not reusing any of this stuff, really no reason to do any of that. So we just pull this out as an assembly, and pretty sure we're not reusing anything here. Just a little bit of info for you guys here. Kind of mentioned a little earlier in the video, we didn't have that much wear. Oops, sorry, not on camera. We didn't have that much wear on this outer tensioner shoe. I mean, enough to want to replace it, but nothing dangerous going to happen here. And I've kind of always mentioned when you're doing these checks, you can always see this one just by, you know, pulling the cam cover off, but it's very difficult to get a look at the back one. You can kind of shine a light in there and get an idea, but you really don't want to just judge the condition of both tensioners based on the front one, and here's why. If you look at this one, I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see this on camera, but this one is worn much further through. You can actually see that this outer lip right here is already cracked through and pushed down beyond the chain. This tensioner is much, much, much closer to failure than this outer one is. So good thing we caught this when we did. Wouldn't want this thing breaking and sending a whole bunch of parts through your motor. One of the reasons why we do the hydraulic tensioner upgrade in the first place is so you never have to worry about this ever again. That's why we call it a ticking time bomb. Not a question of if, but when. So let me put this aside, wipe my hands off, and we'll keep rolling. All right, so with our disassembly pretty much complete, time to do a little bit of checking. And that means time to check the pinion shaft run out. So we're gonna get our gauge on here and see how this motor is. Of course, we're looking for as close to 0 as possible. Ideally 0. Ideally under 3 thousandths, really needs to be under 5 thousandths to run the fueling setup we're running. So let's hope we've got a good crank, and we'll see what's here. All right, so with 4 thousandths of run out on the pinion shaft, we're good to proceed. Just under that limit I mentioned of 5 thousandths, so we're good to go. Next step's gonna be to get these old cam bearings out and put a set of new cam bearings in. So we'll go ahead and get these removed and install the new ones. There's two. So if you're not familiar, the reason we always replace these without even checking to see if they're good or not is because the original bearings that come in here, might be a little hard to see, are caged on the inside, so they're not full rollers all the way around. There's a cage here, and I'll show you on the new ones. The rollers go all the way around. Hopefully you can see that. So there's more surface area of rollers supporting the cam. Hopefully that makes sense. So we always do this upgrade anytime we change the cams. All right, so to install the new bearings, I wiped the bores clean, and I'm just gonna put the tiniest bit of assembly lube in here just to help them go in nice and smooth. Just the thinnest of coatings. Take the new bearing, making sure that the part number, lettering, all that stuff is facing out. Put that onto the tool. And go ahead, get this installed. All right, there's one installed. Do the exact same thing on the other one. All right, so that's both our bearings installed. We can move on to getting the cams, cam plate, and oil pump ready to go in. All right, well, got a whole bunch of boxes here. Let's see what we got. So first thing, all of our gaskets, O-rings, etc. Got Feuling's solid one-piece push rods. Feuling Race Series lifters. HP Plus oil pump. It's going to be the cams themselves. So we've got 525 conversion cams, which is what we wanted. We've got the cam plate. And then this is going to be all of our miscellaneous parts here. This is, I want it to kind of open to go through. So let's see, we've got Moly Lube, Loctite, spacer shims, inner and outer chain, 2 hydraulic tensioners, got some bolts. It's going to be the pinion and sprocket and cam sprocket bolts, cam plate hardware probably. And we got our pinion sprocket and our cam sprocket. So maybe it's obvious here, not all cam conversion kits, or hydraulic tensioner conversion kits, I should say, are created equal. The reason I like the Feuling kit versus some of the other ones, the Screaming Eagle one comes to mind, is that the Feuling kit really replaces everything from the, let's call it like from the front side or the outside side of the camshaft itself out. Everything gets replaced with the new style parts. So that would be 06 up, 07 up, depending on the model of the bike. So in other cases, it would use a stock cam or a stock style cam. So it has the same journals on each end. So the inside of the cam plate, all that stuff would be old style parts. So you'd still have bearings in your cam plate instead of just the cams riding in bushings, or in the case of Feuling, just riding in the cam plate itself. You'd have the old style chain. You'd have a new style tensioner back there, but an old style chain, which is not as good in terms of for wear. And the good about that is you can run any old style cam you want. On these conversion setups, you have to run a conversion cam. So basically what that means is, I'll show you one of these. You're not gonna be able to see this, the difference here with the naked eye, but I'll be able to at least point out to you what I'm talking about. So here's one of our cams. The reason that this camshaft is unique and why it's a conversion cam is that this surface here, the diameter of this journal, is made to go into the smaller diameter bearing of an old style cam chest, the old style case. This side is meant to go into a new style cam plate. So this is designed to ride directly in the cam plate as opposed to having that whole bearing assembly around it. And I can show you that, I guess, on the old ones. But suffice it to say, this is a unique part. Now, Feuling's not the only one that sells these. Andrews sells them too, maybe some others. But the point here is that this is unique, so your camshaft selection is more limited than if you were running something that was 100% new style or 100% old style. So I call these kind of the mullet cam, if that makes sense. So I'll put that aside for a second. So the benefit of having all that new stuff is it's all interchangeable once you have all this setup done. You can really run any parts you want. Parts are easy to swap, to change, and also presumably the new style cam plate, chains, all that stuff are going to be better, and certainly a lot less work in terms of changing this stuff because you don't have to deal with pressing those races and cam bearings on the cam plate side. So this is a pretty straightforward install kind of from here out. So these kits cost more than your typical cam chest kit does because it comes with a whole lot more parts, but hey, those are the breaks. So I'm gonna move this stuff out of the way for the moment, and I'm gonna get the cam plate, the oil pump, and the cams pulled out of the box, cleaned up, go through every part, clean them all off, inspect them all, make sure they're all good. We don't have any burrs or manufacturing defects or anything like that. We'll get them all laid out here, and then we'll start to get the cam plate assembly put together and the oil pump put together, and we'll be ready to install them in the bike. All right, so with everything cleaned, dried, and air compressored out, I'm gonna get the oil pump assembled to get these parts out of the way, and then we'll get the cam plate assembled. Okay, oil pump's put together. Let's go ahead and start to get the cam plate put together. So we're gonna get the cams, inner chain, and tensioner all installed in this as one assembly, and then we'll go over and install the oil pump and then the cam plate cam assembly into the bike. All right, important thing here is making sure that the timing marks on the two cams are aligned. So we're good, we'll proceed. Okay, so with our parts all prepped, we can go ahead and get them installed in the engine. First thing I'm gonna do is get the pinion shaft turned over so that the flats are pointed up. Looks pretty good. All right, next thing I'm gonna do is get the flats on the oil pump all aligned with each other and then aligned in the direction we want them so they're parallel to the pinion shaft. So the oil pump goes in kind of like that. So I want to get these flats pointed like that. Now, before we put this on, this O-ring is going to be a problem. I don't remember these O-rings. I know I've done them in the past, but I don't think all their oil pumps have these. The S&S pumps definitely don't use them. This feels like a pain to me, but hopefully, well, I guess there's probably a reason for it. But in any event, I'm going to do a little lubrication here. Pinion shaft. Look at these cam bearings while we're here. Inside this O-ring boss. Get inside these two. Okay. All right, and then I want to get the boss here for the O-ring. And, oops, this O-ring itself. Now, on the S&S pumps, and you've seen me do this, we put the O-ring into the case. The Feuling pumps don't have that chamfer on them, so the O-ring goes on the pump. All right, so let's go ahead and get this guy installed. Okay. Everybody's seated. Now, before I get the cam plate in, I gotta get this O-ring to somehow stay in place. Do not know how I'm gonna do that. All right, so if you've done this before or you're following along with your own instructions, you'll see I've deviated from the instructions here, and maybe I shouldn't have. I was just doing this the way I'm more comfortable, which is to install the pump first and then put the plate on top of it. Feuling would have you install the pump onto the plate and put it all in together. I don't like that because it's much harder to make sure that this is seating correctly in the scavenge. But maybe the reason they want you to do that is because it might be easier to get this O-ring seated having the cam plate clamped against it if you do it off the bike, but I'm gonna figure out how to do this. I'm gonna maybe try and stretch this O-ring out a little bit, see what I can do. I'll get it seated in there and then we'll get the cam plate put on. All right, so with the cam plate and oil pump both secured in, following the stepped torque sequences for both the cam plate and the oil pump and turning the pinion shaft in between to make sure everything gets aligned, we are ready to go to install our chain and sprockets here. Now, if you're familiar with doing this job, you know that the sprocket that sits under the cam sprocket, the spacer that sits under the cam sprocket, there's a variation in these, and you have to check and measure to make sure you get the right offset to get your sprockets aligned. Normally what you would do if this was a late model Dyna is you'd start with the spacer you had and check that one and go from there and see if you had to go up or down. Since this is a totally new setup and these are different spacers and everything's different, we don't kind of have a starting point, so you just kind of have to pick one. So I'm gonna start with a 120. I'm gonna put that in there, and We're gonna put the sprockets on, torque them to 15 pounds each, measure the offset, and make sure that we get them as close as possible. You wanna be under 9 thousandths. I'm sorry, yeah. So yes, you wanna be under 9 thousandths, or at 9 thousandths, I guess, but truthfully, you want them as close to 0 as possible. So using spacers that are 10,000th increments, you wanna get the closest alignment you possibly can. So, we've got that spacer in there. Let's throw our cam sprocket on. And this should go without saying, we're putting these on without the chain at the moment, which means obviously the timing marks don't matter because there's nothing connecting them together without the chain. All right, well, battery died as I was doing that there, but hopefully you got the gist of it. Put the sprockets in, put the sprockets on with the spacer, tighten them down, then check the offset. And this never happens, but I actually got it definitely correct on the first guess. The 120,000 spacer is definitely the right one. We've got definitely less than 8 thousandths, which means that if we were to go up or down, the gap would get worse rather than better, so we're good. I think we're probably closer to like 3 thousandths, which is really good. In any event, these are ready to get installed finally now, so I'll take these off, lubricate them, put the chain on, reinstall them, and then we'll get the tensioner on, and we'll be pretty much done with this section. Once again, making sure that the timing marks are aligned, very important. An odd number of people mess that up. I'm really not sure how or why. Okay, so this confuses people sometimes. Obviously, you can see what I did there is I rotated this because where I left off on turning this pinion shaft, it's no longer pointed straight up and down, so the timing mark is not pointed in the correct direction anymore. It doesn't matter, right? Because obviously these things spin and they're on a rotation and the chain keeps them timed. So as long as the timing marks were facing each other and you didn't move the teeth of the chain, or the chain on the teeth of the sprockets, you can turn this to get these to line up. And you'll see, once I get the bolts in and I spin this around, that when this timing mark comes back around past here, this timing mark will be lined up with it. Well, half the time, because this one turns 1 time for every 2 times this one turns. So you'll see. But in any event, let's get this hardware put in. So we got them both snugged down. I'm gonna tighten them both to 15, and then back them off, and then final tighten them. Now we're gonna go to 24 and 34. That's our sprockets. Now, let me just show you what I was talking about here. Let's turn this over. So, there we go. Timing marks aligned. For what it's worth, it's going to be top dead center on the rear cylinder. And then if we go 180 degrees or 360 degrees on the pinion sprocket, it'll be 180 degrees on the cam sprocket. We'll be at top dead center on the front. So, just a little gut check. And I'm gonna put those back. One last little detail to take care of here, like I mentioned, let's get that chain tensioner put in. All right, chain tensioner is on, torque to 120 inch-pounds. I'm gonna spin this over a couple more times, got some extra assembly lube on here. Just make sure everything is nice and lubricated, moving nice and smoothly. See, I'm turning now with one finger. And I think everything looks great here. So that's gonna do it for me today. I mentioned we were back from the Christmas holiday, now it's time to leave again for New Year's. So I'm gonna leave this open for now, and we're gonna come back and start getting the lifters done and getting the top end reassembled. Like I said, it's gonna be a couple days from now after the new year for me, but for you guys, it's coming up in about 2 seconds, so stay tuned. All right, let's go ahead and get this top end assembled. First thing I've got to do is get the lower rocker housings in place. Now, quick call out, the Feuling kit does not come with lower rocker housing gaskets. The good reason for that is that you don't actually need to remove them as part of this installation, just the rocker arm support plates. The lower housings can stay in place. We removed them, number one, because we just wanted to make sure we had fresh gaskets everywhere, but number two, we actually have new chrome covers for everything on the motor. So they were all in really good shape, but every single cover, unfortunately, had at least one little imperfection in it, like a bubble or a chip in the chrome. So can't fix that. These parts are still in production, so customer opted to just replace them all. So it's gonna look really good. But anyway, we've got some gaskets and those rocker housings, lower rocker housings to go on. The other thing is we've got ARP hardware from Feuling for everything on the engine, actually the transmission and primary too. So we've got Feuling's external hardware packages for both that stuff, both of those things I should say. We also have Feuling's top end internal hardware for this. So we've got new hardware for, well, everything. All the internal bolts, rocker housing bolts, the rocker arm support plate bolts, all that good stuff. So I'm gonna be using new hardware for all that, along with new parts, new gaskets. It's basically gonna be a brand new motor from here up. I don't think we're reusing anything, actually. That's kind of ironic. But anyway, enough of that. Go ahead and get these put on. All right, those snugged, go ahead and torque them down to 160 inch-pounds. All right, so with the front done, gonna do the exact same thing on the rear. All right, with the lower rocker housings back in, we can go ahead and start to get the lifters, lifter blocks, and then ultimately push rods put in. So we'll start with the lifters. I'm just gonna take some assembly lube and grease up the lifter bores. All right, next step is gonna be to put the lifters themselves in. I've got these in our little vacuum air bleeder here. So basically we've got all the air out of the lifters. They're filled with oil. So we'll just grab these one at a time and get them put in place up there. Anti-rotation pins. All right, the lifter's in. I'm just gonna do a little rotation of the motor. And the reason I'm doing this is I just wanna see the lifters come up and down, just to make sure that they're not gonna get hung up in the bores at all. You shouldn't have a problem with that. This is more critical on Milwaukee 8 motors where you have those tappet cuffs and they could go in crooked. With these anti-rotation pins, it's not such a big deal. But just wanna give yourself a gut check that obviously they're gonna come up on their own from the cam, but trying to make sure that they're coming down as well. And these are all working perfectly. All right, let's get some tappet covers installed. All right, with the lifters and lifter covers done, we can go on to getting the push rods and then rocker arms and rocker arm support plates in. So I've got new solid push rods from Feuling. These are, if you haven't ever held one of these in your hand before, these are beefy. These are probably weigh, I don't know how much more than the OE ones, but a lot. Definitely super strong. So I'm gonna set each one of these up with a cover assembly and we'll get them installed. We've got 2 longs for the exhaust and then 2 shorts for the intake. All right, just that easy. A little more simple than doing the adjustable ones. All right, so I've got the rear cylinder at the moment on top dead center, so we're gonna start with the rocker arm support plate there, because that's where the motor's gotta be. I guess when I mentioned that we've got everything new from here up, I wasn't thinking about the rocker arms and support plates. We are reusing the stock stuff, bushings, arms, shafts, all that stuff is in really good shape, so that stuff's getting reused, but we do have new upgraded billet breathers from Feuling, which are killer. So we'll start on the rear. Let me grab the parts for that and we'll keep rolling. All right, so here's the rocker arm support plate and Feuling breather loosely installed, just got the hardware started. I'm gonna kind of get this thing to sit evenly and get the fasteners down just so they're touching. And then I'm gonna go and tighten these in a crisscross pattern, 1/4 turn at a time to get this to sit down evenly. It's gonna be compressing the lifters as we do it. So we just wanna make sure we do it evenly. And we'll get that snugged and then we'll torque it to spec in that same sequence. So let me get started on that, we'll make it happen. All right, so with those torqued down to spec, go ahead and do our breather bolts. The rear one I already put in. I guess you saw me do that with the rear bolts for the rocker arm support plate as well. It's easier to slide this in this way than to try and get the bolts in under the frame. So you do those all together, it goes in easier. So we just put a little blue Loctite on this guy. And we'll get it put in place. All right, that one's done. Do the same thing on the front. All right, so like I said, same deal on the front as the rear. Just gotta get the motor turned over now that the lifters have had time to bleed down on the rear. So as I do this, you should see the push rods move and you should see them land in their lowest positions, which is right there. And we're good to go. All right, rocker arm support plate in place, get this breather put in, give you the opportunity to actually kind of see what this looks like. It's the same basic pieces as the OE breathers, but just a much nicer billet housing. So we've got our flapper valve in here, and our filter in the bottom. So goes in this way. We've got a gasket and our cover for the top. Get those together, and then we've got a gasket for the bottom. So that all goes together like that, and just drop it in here. All right, with rocker assembly and breather all done, we're up here at the front, might as well continue with getting this buttoned up. So we'll go ahead and get the upper rocker cover put on. Start with a gasket here. And our shiny brand new cover. All right, with our new ARP hardware run down, but all still loose, just gonna get this cover centered on here, and then I'm gonna snug all the bolts down in sequence, and then we'll torque them. All right, following that same sequence, torque them all down to 18 foot-pounds. All right, rear rocker box cover, exact same thing as the front. All right, rocker box is done. You can close up the push rod tubes and get the cam cover put on. Well, that is gonna do it for the Feuling hydraulic tensioner cam chest conversion kit install. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this is just the first of many projects to come on this bike. We've got a whole bunch of stuff to do. We've got suspension coming up, we've got a chain conversion coming up, handlebars, front end, wheels. We're gonna do an oil pan mod, fender is gonna get modified, new seat. Pretty much we're touching everything on this bike. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you were here for just the cam install, because that's the video you were looking for, hopefully maybe we've intrigued you to watch some other stuff. But if you're here for the build series, this was just part one, and I hope you're looking forward to the rest of the series. So one more thing to tell you before I say goodbye, and that is as of this week, we have got international shipping now available on all of our Iron Anchor Cycles merch on the website. I actually just fulfilled the first international order, and that was going to Australia, so thank you very much for that order if you're watching. But for the rest of you, please check out the site. If you're interested in helping to support the channel, easiest thing to do is subscribe, like, comment, do all that good stuff. If you're interested in supporting in a little more direct way, go over to the website, buy a t-shirt, buy a hat. It's always a big help. So that's all I'm gonna say. That's gonna wrap it up for this video, and we'll see you on the next one. One take, motherfuckers.